Let's go all the way back years and years ago. Honestly, it wasn't that long ago, but some days it does feel like it was just yesterday, but also a lifetime ago. Have you guys ever experienced that? It's kind of weird. So for me and my husband, when we first met, we were both working at Walmart, of all places. So I actually didn't meet my husband first. What actually happened was I was a cashier and he was a cashier, but his best friend, who he considered a sister at the time, was also a cashier. And that's who I actually met first, was her. So we were working one of the earliest shifts that day, long time ago, back in our golden years. And back then we would go to work at like 5 or 6 in the morning. So she was a cashier and I was a cashier, and it's pretty dead that early in the morning at Walmart, at least at the time it was. And so we were just kind of standing next to our cashier lanes, and I ended up looking at her. She looked at me and she just decided to say the most random thing ever. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I really want chocolate cake." Now, if anybody knows me, I love to bake. I love to cook for people and I love to make food for people. It's just a real passion of mine. And so to hear her say that she really wanted cake, I blurted out the thing that I could think of at the time, and I told her, "Okay, I'll make you a chocolate cake and I'll bring it to you tomorrow. Do you work?" And she said, "Yes, this is my schedule." And I said, "Okay, sounds great. I'll go ahead and make you a chocolate cake tonight and I'll bring it to you tomorrow." And she thought that was like the most random, weirdest thing ever for us to have never met before. We thought at the time, and for someone random to bring a chocolate cake. Now, some backstory to this and why I decided to do this at the time was I had just moved into my low-income housing apartment. So the studio apartment that I lived in, it actually originally was a hotel room. So it did not have a stove, it did not have an oven, and one of my biggest things, well, two biggest things that I said when I finally got a real apartment was, if there's an oven, I was baking like no other, and if I was allowed to have an animal, then I would adopt a cat that was homeless as well from the shelter, and I would give a homeless cat a home just like I had been given a home. So of course I got a cat, and I was gonna bake my first cake in that apartment for this random girl that I just met at work. So I decided to make something that I had made once before previously, and I'll show a picture here. And I don't know, it felt right to make this chocolate bundt cake. So I decided to replicate my amazing masterpiece that I had made years earlier, and I made a chocolate bundt cake. Now, apart from making this cake and having a near fatal crash with it on the floor because of said cat that I rescued, because, you know, cats are cats and they like to knock things off of tables, I finally was able to bring this cake to work the next day. So I gave this cake to the girl and she loved it, and unbeknownst to me, the person that she was living with at the time was my husband. So I didn't ever meet him before this time, and he ended up coming up to me and asked if he could have some of the cake. And I said, "Well, honestly, it's for someone else, but I'm sure, you know, I'm sure it's okay if a slice of it's missing. She probably won't mind. It'll be fine." So he ended up having some of the cake and absolutely loved the cake. It was amazing. I bake a really nice cake. Just a couple days later, he ended up actually asking for my number. We exchanged, we texted each other. He came over, we hung out a lot. I ended up letting him into my apartment. And because I just moved in and I was homeless, I didn't really have a whole lot of things. He saw that I was still sleeping on the floor, and he ended up giving me an extra bed that his family had in their house that they weren't using. So he ended up bringing me the bed, and we only knew each other for a couple of days, and this absolutely just shocked me. I had never been treated with such kindness before, especially someone that I had never really met. They didn't owe me anything, certainly, and he ended up bringing me a bed. And this really was heartfelt, touched my heart, like was one of the most amazing things that anybody's ever done for me before. So we ended up still texting each other late at night, and I was dating someone at the time, so I didn't really feel like it was kind of me to lead him on. He did know that I was dating someone, and I had been dating this guy for 5 years. Unfortunately, it was a very abusive relationship, and it was an online relationship. I had only met this man once before, and we stayed together for about a month in person, and it wasn't the best meeting, I have to say, sadly. And we had been on again, off again since I was 15. I wanted out of this thing. I didn't know how to leave. I didn't want to leave because I felt like my whole life was wrapped up in this. Well, he ended up breaking up with me one day, and so my husband asked me out on a date. We went to my favorite Chinese restaurant, and we had some Chinese food, and we went to see the most amazing movie ever, The Grey, with Liam Neeson. And what's really silly is my husband ended up leaving his handout, you know, the famous handout on the seat, waiting for the girl to take the hand, and I didn't. I was fiercely clutching the popcorn. I had never been on a date before. I was super nervous, and I was clutching that popcorn bucket with all of my might, and I never noticed his hand there on the seat, and I felt terrible. He thought I didn't like him, and that's so not the case. He also talked a lot during the movie, and that made me feel really anxious. I had never really been to movie theater. It's just not something that my family did, and so I felt really awkward, but it was really a good time. I had a lot of fun. So we ended up finishing out the date, and my ex was texting me during the whole thing, was freaking out that I was with this person, and oh my gosh, how could I be doing this? Well, unfortunately, what happens with an abused person is they usually go back to their abuser. So literally the next day, I ended up getting back with my ex. We were together for about a week after that, and then he ended up calling me some names, and I just decided, you know, I do not deserve to be called names. I don't deserve to be treated like crap. I'm done. I've had enough. So I ended up actually breaking up with him this time and decided that, you know what, I've had enough, but I will give it 3 full days, and if he doesn't end up texting me back, then I will go ahead and ask if my husband wants to date, and we'll see where it goes from there. Well, 3 days passed, and on the 3rd day, kid you not, my ex texted me, but instead of getting back together, he started to call me more names, and so I was for sure done, and I told him that, and I ended up dating my husband. So with us dating, he actually ended up moving in with me fairly quickly. He had some falling out with his family, and he needed a place to stay, and I had a 1-bedroom apartment with a newly installed bed, so he ended up actually moving in with me. So my husband ended up moving in with me pretty early on in our relationship, and that really forced us to see what our behaviors were like and whether we were really truly gonna get along. Dating definitely was a challenge since we both worked at Walmart. We didn't really get paid a whole lot of money. I ended up leaving that job, then he eventually ended up leaving that job. We actually ended up being without jobs for a couple of months, and I'm not quite sure how we did that, but we somehow did, and we cherished all the time that we possibly could with each other. I ended up actually proposing to him. He later on ended up proposing to me, so we kind of did like a double proposal, and that's pretty much where it all ended up being. We knew really early on that we really liked each other, and once we were able to get the chance to actually date, hang out with each other, we instantly knew that we were meant to be. We ended up finding out that both of our families kind of knew each other already, and we had basically been missing each other our whole entire lives, so it really feels like fate really brought us together at the end of everything that happened. Anyways, that's my story time for today. That's just the little bit of beginning of our relationship. If you guys have questions, go ahead and drop them down in the comment section below, and I'll get to them when I can. If you guys haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Check out my other videos. I do have some playlists down below of Real World Talk episodes. If you haven't already, check those out. I'll be adding to this story. I really want to talk about our engagement time and our wedding separately in another video. So if you guys have any questions that you guys want to know about us, go ahead and drop them in the comment section down below, and I'll make sure to add those into the video for you. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching my videos, and I hope that you have a great day.